Welcome, welcome to Jackie's edition of the Special Interest Talks. Take it away.
So I've been making short films for about 8 years now, and for actually 8 years now, and I'm going to present on some of the basics of how to get into it if you are ever curious. So basically, you want to make movies. It's the beginning guide to making a short film. So my experience is with the 48-hour film project. What happens is every year, cities around the world are given a date, and then just before the 48-hour mark begins, they're given a choice of 2 genres out of 30. They're given a prop they have to incorporate, a line of dialogue they have to incorporate, and a character name and occupation they have to incorporate. And then we have basically 48 hours to make and turn in a short 5 to 7 minute film. It's a good way to kind of get introduced to the industry, just because there are always teams searching for different parts and pieces. You can join up, you can learn, and you can get started. There are 3 basic things that you need for making a movie. You need tech, a team, and then just general knowledge. Tech, first of all, sound. What you can probably hear in my background is the air conditioning going. And normally you need to pay attention to the factors in your area and be able to turn it off. Like, I can turn off the air conditioning. But there's also what you do when starting to film your location is you record 2 minutes of just the audio flat. No talking, no extra sounds, just so that the editor can later take that, reverse it, and use it to cancel out the white noise that is generally involved in a real life setting. Like, sets don't have to do that. They're controlled. When you're out in the world, you need the noise canceling. Further tech that is cheap, like all of this is basically beginner and entry level. But this is a lavalier mic. It's very straightforward. It's a basic one, so it's only $20. You need something with a USB port, not USB port. You need something with this port to plug in. Generally, well, Android phones at least have it. Computers have it too. But this gathers the sound that's right there direct to you. And it's because the clip, you can tuck it in underneath a collar and hide it. Now, normally you would want darker clothing. Let's demonstrate this thoroughly. You can tuck it up there, and then you bring the cord back behind you, and it will be invisible, but it's getting all of the sound that's right here from your mouth instead of the atmospheric sound. Another important thing is lighting. What you can see right now is I've got natural light and also a bit of overhead light. But various lamps can add shadows, can detract, and you want to make sure that your face, for most things, you want to make sure your face is lit. You don't want weird shadows. And you can bring various different lamps. Like this is a basic living room lamp. This is an ordinary desk lamp, just adjustable to be able to reflect off various surfaces. And then if you want variation in colored lighting, we have like a mood lamp, which changes, it makes the lighting cooler, it diffuses, but it's also really intense. So as you can see, different lights provide a different effect and a different look. And they influence the mood of what you're filming. Now, a lot of times, if you're working with a full team, you'll have someone who comes with professional lights, which helps. But if you're just starting out, any light can help get you there. You just need to be trying to get rid of weird wrinkles, trying to get rid of weird creases and weird shadows, and just basically conveying the right mood. You don't need to go expensive, especially if you're just beginning. Camera, I've got a Canon there, but a lot of phones have good enough cameras nowadays. Even the camera on your computer, like what we're using right now for Zoom, is high enough quality that you can make a film. Basically, you may already have everything you need tech-wise, except for probably the editing suite. How the editing suite is what you put all of the information into. You take your sound files, you take your video files, basically you take everything and you can cut and paste fairly. It's not entirely simple. I won't lie, that is probably the most complicated part of all of making a movie. But there are free editing software pieces that are really useful, and one of them is called DaVinci. You can download it and check it out and mess it around with it, but it allows you to pop film in, to pop it out, to shorten, to cut. It's accessible and fairly intuitive. So I would definitely recommend DaVinci if you're just starting out. Then there's the team. Now, you can do this solo. There are people who compete solo. There are people who do the whole thing solo. So what I mean as far as team is not necessarily people, but the roles you need to cover and consider. Writing is the central, it's the foundation. If you've got a story and it's solid and you can convey it, then you can cover it for everything else. If the story is weak, it's all going to fall apart. Costuming and props, they're not always crucial. Like, my costumer team will probably kill me for saying that, but when you're just starting out, there's so much you can do with what's just in your closet. You're generally not going to be making period pieces or sci-fi pieces. I say, having mostly made sci-fi pieces. But you can find pieces to make it work. You can utilize just about anything for a prop. Spray paint goes a long way for making something look like something else. For directing, that's a little more difficult to do on your own. You want to make sure you're conveying the right information and the right mood, and basically that the story that you know in your head is actually the story that's being seen. I would definitely recommend, even if you're trying to do mostly a solo movie, to have someone to work as your director, to have someone who can say, actually, what you're saying there isn't coming through, or, you know, more simply, you're blinking way too much, or you're gesturing way too much, or you're not using the right dialogue, you've got these lines written and you're using too much filler. Always have feedback. No one is the best movie maker. No one does it completely solo and does it well. Acting, obviously, I mean, that's a given. If you're going to have a movie, you're going to have actors, whether it's people or animals. I think that element is fairly self-explanatory. Editing is the other part of your foundation. Like, if you've got good writing, you've got a good starting point. If you've got good editing, then they can take anything and make it at least more presentable. You still need to have good other elements. But if your editing is bad, you are also going to have a poor product. At the end of the day, the story, whether it's abstract or concrete, is what you're trying to tell, is what the whole thing is about. And if your story doesn't come through, then your movie doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It doesn't evoke, it doesn't convey what you want it to convey. Even if you don't have a specific set topic that you want your movie to say, there's still something in there, whether it's a mood or it's a point of view, and you're going to need both your writing and your editing to get you there. Actors, You can take them and leave them. I say that as someone who does acting. They are often a dime a dozen. You can get more, you can replace them if they're not doing the job, but you need to have, I mean, even poor actors you can work around. We've done it before. We've had some younger people who didn't really know what they were doing and who we had to write around and we had to edit around. And it's doable, but your writing and editing needs to be on point. Script supervising is also really important because they're the people that are making sure that continuity is followed. If you have a glove on your left hand in one scene and then it moves to the right hand in another, they're going to catch that. So obviously this is also something you can do yourself, but you need to be watching for that continuity, like the water levels in glasses, if someone is wearing their glasses or not, if someone's wearing a wedding ring or not. It's just keeping things going and also making sure that what's in the script that needs to be in the film actually is. So if we're going back to the 48-hour film project, if the prop is like it was one year, marshmallows, you need to make sure that the shot with marshmallows is in there. You need to make sure that the line of dialogue that you were given, which I believe this year was wash your hands, is in there. It's just making sure all the elements are in place. Then there's the other. Producing is the money. If you're doing it yourself, obviously, you're managing your own money. But if you're bringing in people, that kind of ties into also like equipment, if you want better equipment, or craft services, which I've got listed at the end there. But generally, when you're making festival film sort of things, you're not paying people, so you should really feed them. You should really make sure that there's some solid giving back at the very least to the people who are giving you their time. And that's part of where the producer comes in. They're making sure that meals are arranged, that the money's there for the supplies and meals, and yeah, they're the money behind it basically. Makeup can be self-done, can be volunteered. The most crucial parts of it are contouring. Well, you can Google it. Basic contouring is darker lines around the jaw, under the cheekbone, and then a line around the top of the head. Those are dark lines. And then you have a light line down the center of your face and along the top of your cheekbones. And then you blend that in. That's a very basic, but that alone makes your face stand out more as a face on camera. Otherwise, it kind of blends in. Clapping is, you've seen the clapboard where they list out a scene and they do the clap. The first year we made a movie, we did not realize the significance of it. What that sound is a signal for syncing sound and video, and it is invaluable to an editor. You don't need the actual clapboard, though they're kind of fun. You can just do a countdown and a loud clap physically on camera, but they have to see the spike of sound, or you, if you're doing the editing, you have to see the spike of sound and be able to line it up with what's happening visually. So I'm going to clap here. It's going to be kind of loud as a warning. 3, 2, 1. Just that is enough to get you synced up and to get you going. Boom operating and lighting they're extra if you've got other people coming on your team who do it, who do sound and who do light. They're the ones who are going to be arranging the lighting at different angles to make sure weird shadows like the one behind me isn't there, or weird wrinkles aren't there, or the face looks right for lighting. Boom operators, booms are the microphones that go over the top, and they have the fuzzy thing at the end. I'm not actually sure what the technical name for that is. We call it a cat. I'm pretty sure that's not accurate, but they're the ones that hold onto the cat and make sure that it also doesn't droop onto the scene while it's getting all of the sound that it needs. Maybe I should have looked that up. Moving on. Just a few tips that, things that we learned along the way that I think could help other teams. The first one is to forget one-shot takes. One year we had an aspiring director who was obsessed with doing takes in one shot. He wanted it to be more, he felt it was more cinematic. And I mean, this was still one of our early years, and we went, sure, because we'd never tried it before. Unfortunately, what this meant for the editor was that because it was all one camera, one shot, he couldn't cut from one scene to another, from one angle to another. There were no gaps to do that. There was no footage to do that. And during a festival, what you're doing is, like the 40-hour film festival, you have 5 to 7 minutes to put this film in. So a lot of his shots were too long. And we had to cut at the beginnings and ends of other scenes just to make main scenes fit. And the final product was not as good as it could have been. It was probably our best script and our best acting team. And our editor actually has the footage still. And one of these days, he promises he'll get around to make full, unfortunately, 10 to 12 minute thing that it would have to be because it was all in one shot. When you don't have time limits, time constraints, you can probably go for one-shot takes. And we've seen them done artistically recently in the 1917 movie, I believe, where the guy was running through the battlefield and all the soldiers were running behind him. It was a really effective shot. It has power. But when you have time constraints as strict as 5 to 7 minutes, don't do it, because your editor is going to hate you and themselves, and the final product just won't be as strong. Tip number 2, each team should have one specific lead. Our first year, we just gathered a group of friends together and said, hey, let's make a movie, which is, fun. But our writing team had 7 people and no head. And so we did make a movie, but it's not exactly coherent, and it's not very tight. Like our second year, we had one single writer, and that didn't go that well either. We needed a team. And since then, we've had 3 to 5 people on a team with a specific lead writer who can make the call and say, actually, no, we're doing this. And that's really important because, like, prior to the pandemic, we would write in a room with people coming and going as we set up, and someone would come in with an idea, and if it was a fun idea, there would be ripple effects around the room. And sometimes fun ideas aren't practical. You want to make the movie you want to make, but you also have to remember your constraints. Like for the 40-hour project, you've got 48 hours and you've got this small team. And you don't want your editors to want to murder you at the end of it. So you've got to balance what's realistic, and you've got to have someone who can step in and say, this is what we're doing. We have a deadline to meet. This is where we need to go. It's the same with the editing team, because sometimes editors have to make a decision about what piece of footage and what mood specifically they're going with. As we've gotten further, we've gotten better at understanding what's realistic and what's not realistic. Your first film or few probably won't be there. It's a learning process, and that's completely cool. Don't fret if it's not the greatest. Tip number 3, communication is key. So for the 48-hour film festival, at 7 p.m., all of the details are released. And then the film is 7 p.m. on Friday. And then the film is due 7:30 p.m. on Sunday to account for travel time. So at 7 p.m. on Friday, all of the writers are seated down in the room. And we get the information, we start working on it, but we are also coordinating with costuming, who for us is scattered through various thrift shops in the area, and props, same deal. As we're trying to communicate what we're going to go with, what the look is, and what we're expecting. And we also have to keep in makeup and hair in the loop of communication. We have to let the director know what we're thinking mood-wise. And then throughout the weekend, there's questions back. What were you thinking here? We have a question about the script here. their hair doesn't do what we want them to do, want it to do. And you just have to be ready to spend a lot of time talking and to be willing to work with these people. So that's another thing about the team when you form it. Make sure that you can get along with everyone, basically. There have been years when we have had difficult people, and sometimes you can work around them, and sometimes it's a serious challenge. This year we actually had an actor who, well, because this year we had to do it remotely, we didn't have as many options. And we had to work with an actor who was not happy about anything, unfortunately, and showed up to set 3 hours late. So that set everything off. And you need people who are willing to communicate and work with the team. And that ties into the next point. Everyone is the star. Like, the actors are not the biggest feature here. The director is seriously important. Like in the example of the one-shot take, our director was the weak spot. And because of the choices that we all went along with, we kind of fell apart. If you have a weak link, you can often work around them, but you do not have any one person who is irreplaceable and who is the center of it. In years that aren't pandemic crazy, you have to be willing to cut people too. The difficulty of cutting people has weakened more than our team, actually. You hear a lot of stories about how one person can drag everything down and cause problems. So just keep in mind that you need people who are willing to be part of it. But don't get too serious unless, I mean, there are teams that join that want to win. And if you join with that mindset, if you have a team with that mindset and they're all on board with that, then go with it. Our mindset is generally, we're having fun and we're making a movie. And our team has less turnover due to that, and our team seems to have a little less stress. But that's just me seeing it from an outside perspective. I might be not seeing the whole picture of the highly competitive teams. The next tip is be mindful of the editing team. They are not miracle workers. They will do their best, but unfortunately, they have only as much time as you give them. And that's really huge for like the 48-hour project. We need to be done filming by Saturday, approximately 7 p.m. optimally, so that you can give all your footage to editing, so that they can say for sure if they need certain reshoots, and they can actually get to work, because editing is the most technical and the most demanding of the jobs on any movie. Cutting it, syncing it, making everything line up is very hard, and if you want special graphics, you're going to need to make sure that you bring in someone who's an expert at it. Don't go to your team and be like, hey, actually, you know the Star Wars scrolling text? Can we do that? Because your editors probably don't know how to do that, and throwing that at them at the last minute is, well, it's not nice, and it's also going to make them want to murder you, which generally on these teams, they know where you live. So just keep that in mind. Dave is our main editor on our team, and you can kind of tell when you've asked him for something a little too much. And you should have meetings before you start to make the movies. And one of the smart things to do is to get to know your editors and get to know when they're making faces that say, you really shouldn't ask me for that, or I really don't know if I can do that, because a key part of making a movie is making it easier on the editors. And I think I should take back a little bit that everyone is the star comment, because the editing team is the real star. They are going to be working longer hours than any other team. And it's in their hands and in their tech if your movie even makes the deadline. Next tip, consider locations. Before you start filming, you need to have an idea of what locations you want to use. So if you're just making a movie for yourself, you can pick the genre, so it's easier to find things that fit your mood. But if you're making a movie that, like, the genre is going to be picked for you, you want a variety. Talk to people. If you know business owners, try to find places that might be closed during the hours when you would be filming. Try to find places that might fit various moods, like a field if you want to be outdoors. So that is complicated with lighting and timing, just by the way. I should bring that, I'll circle back to that. Indoors is a lot more controllable. Indoors is a lot easier to light. And indoors is a lot more versatile. Right now I have a wall hanging behind me, but there's also a blue wall behind that. It's fairly easy to switch backgrounds if you want something more set. Oh, also with locations, you might need permits. We film guerrilla style, which means that we generally do not get permits for where we're filming. That is not recommended. We do it because of time constraints, because we only have, the 48 hours, and speaking to all the proper authorities and getting all of the paperwork can be complicated. But if you're doing something that's not part of a time constraint challenge, definitely get permits. Yeah, just make sure you do that right. Often, if you own the property, you don't have to worry about it. You do have to sign basically property waivers saying that you own the property, but just know that there are permits required for various locations. Have options of locations to film. Have options for transportation to get there, because sometimes that's a challenge. And I mean, some teams have a location scout who will go and get pictures, and that helps the writers a lot. That's something to consider as well. And then there's the obligatory reminder to remember basically what you're doing. If you're doing this to have fun, have fun. This isn't life or death. It's, for our team, it's a hobby that's also partly about hanging out with friends and making a movie. For other teams that are competitive, it's about trying to win. And also for me personally, as the lead writer for our team, it's about telling a story in a very short time, in a very short format, which is definitely a challenge, but it's also fun. And yeah, that is the end of my slides. So that's my rambling. Do you have any questions? What's the question, Leah? How in the hell? Okay, the question is how in the hell? Magic. Blood magic often. Like, there's blood involved. There is, yeah. The last year's project, I asked my costumer for retro futuristic, and thankfully she was magical. And we had like she found like black and white clothing and she jazzed it up a bit, and it worked. But yeah, sometimes it's just plain magic.
Any other questions?
No questions, but that sounds like so much fun. Stressful, but insanely fun.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely what it is. Like, 48 hours is not a lot of time until you're awake for 48 hours, and that's a whole lot of time.
I've done 4-day theater productions.
Oh.
But
yeah.
I can't imagine doing it for film.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, part of the reason of having different teams to address different stuff is so that you do have time to sleep. But if you're doing it yourself, or you have a smaller team, or people cancel, then yeah, it's a lot of sleep. Like this year, obviously we did remote in 4 different locations just for bubbles and safety reasons. And that meant I was doing all of my sound, all of my lighting, my makeup, my filming, my own directing, and it was a lot. And we need to reshoot on Sunday, so I had to do all the makeup and lighting and everything again. I did not sleep much. It was a lot of work, but it was definitely a lot of fun.
Cool.
That's why we do it. So.
How much time do you get to write out the story within this 48-hour construct?
Generally, we like to have the script done by 11 p.m., so that's about 4 hours. And since it's a 5 to 7 minute film, you want to have about 5 pages. I have a problem, and often it winds up being 8 pages, and then we have to cut it back. But yeah, so.
Just tell your actors to talk faster.
yeah. And tell Dave to edit better. Yeah, that goes over well.
What is your favorite, because you said you have themes that you're given every year. Do you have like a favorite that you've done?
Yeah, so theme-wise, they have 30 genres. They're all organized into 2 lists. And each team, we draw one from each thing, and then we have to choose between those 2 choices. And for a while there, one of our choices kept being war, anti-war, and it was annoying, sorry. Our favorite, well, I think it was we actually drew sci-fi, which I normally do anyway, sorry. But we drew sci-fi, and that, it's freeing, but it's also limiting to have something that open. Like other themes have been fish out of water. This year, what we drew was time travel / fish out of water. So that gave us a little bit more framework. We could choose between the 2 of them, and we went with time travel, but we also pulled out some fish out of water elements. But yeah, I think sci-fi was the most fun in general. Just, I like sci-fi. That's a lot of what I watch, a lot of what I do. So.
Do you end up with like a bunch of ideas before you go in and draw the thing that you can then cannibalize, or do you just brainstorm the whole thing?
We have writers' meetings, about 3 of them or so beforehand, and we do a lot of brainstorming. But none of it has actually made it into the actual film itself as of yet. And that's probably a good thing, because the rules are you're supposed to make it all in the 48 hours. But we do spend a lot of time going, okay, well, if we get this genre, what options do we have? Especially this year, doing it remote in 3 different cities. It was a lot of what could we Zoom, what could we single film, what could we film? Because we had one group that had an actor and a camera person and a director all in the same household. So that helped exponentially. But then we had me doing solo, we had another actress doing solo, and we had one more actress who we actually did have a couple of people go distant filmed for her because she wasn't comfortable doing it herself. So we had to figure out how to work within those limitations. And that's probably the most prep we've ever done. We went through each genre and said, here is a scenario, here is a way we could film it. There's another scenario, here's the way we could film it. So I think most of the pre-planning is just making sure your writing team is on the same page, your editing team is on the same page, and that once it all starts, you can just work together.
Cool. How big is your team, by the way?
In normal years, our team is about 40 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people to wrangle in 48 hours. Holy crap.
That's mostly our producer's job. She has the money, but she's also like, okay, you guys need to be here at this time. You guys need to be here then. But I mean, that also includes, like, that includes our lead costumer who just does costumes. That includes our prop duo. That includes our craft services person who, they're fantastic. Like, he sits down and he makes all of these meals, keeping in mind allergies and dietary requirements and stuff. And then the producer just has a whole bunch of snacks and drinks available. But he brings in meals, actual meals at mealtime. And it's just, it's the best thing. So, yeah. But yeah, this year I think we only had like 20 people total. No, less than that. We had 4 actors, we had 2 cameramen, 2 directors, our script supervisor, the 2 other writers. Sorry. I think we did it with 13 people this year.
Wow.
So yeah. I mean, we didn't need a costumer, obviously, because we were so scattered. We didn't have makeup and hair. We didn't have someone doing the lighting. We didn't have any boom operators. We did our own clapper. So yeah, we cut down a lot.
Do you think that helped for next year, maybe? Provided next year will be a normal year again someday?
I don't know that it did really. Like, if next year we have to do a pandemic again, then it prepped us for next year a lot better. But I think all of us will be really happy to go back to the original format. Because, like, for us, a huge part of it was the fact that these are 40-ish people that we really like. So it's a great weekend hanging out and doing stuff together as well. Like, yeah, you're exhausted at the end of it. You just want to lay down and die somewhere, but you're having fun with friends. You're dying with friends. So
Did you learn anything doing it with such a bare bones, all the limitations that you had to do this year? Did you learn anything that you're probably gonna sort of extrapolate out and take with you for future productions? Do you think?
yeah, definitely. Like, I learned about audio files and video files in particular, because I've never had to deal with that side of it. I've learned how to save them, how to rename them, how to export them, how to stuff them in things. I learned bits about lighting and angles. I've never contoured my face before, and I learned how to do that. Just, yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that I didn't, because I've always been on the writing team, except for the 1 year when we had the solo writer, and I've always been on the acting team. So other roles I haven't had time to really explore because I'm writing in the evening and then acting the next day and then sometimes acting on Sunday too. And this year, that meant I explored a lot more things. It's really cool that a lot of us have so much technology where, like, the phone worked perfectly for the lav mic. It could have filmed as well. With Zoom, I could capture audio and video and have them separately too and offer that to the editor. So, like, there's a lot of daily tech that we have that just makes it easier to actually make these things. You have capabilities, basically. Oh, and the first film you make, don't expect it to be great. Like, yeah, it won't be. But if you have fun, hey. The main point of the first movie is just make sure it's something that you can show in your hometown and not have to leave, basically.
Well, Jackie, thank you so much. That was lovely and wonderful, and incredibly informative.
Glad.